thank you guys so much for hanging out with me here today. This is exciting. This is a full house. This is the first time I've had 3 other guests. So welcome to this amazing moment in the Stark Reflections podcast history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I wanted to start off. So Ara, there's a story we were talking about earlier about how the Novel Intensive Workshop came together. And I'd love to start off by digging into that. Where did this come from?
I was attending the Southern California Writers Conference. I had been going there for a couple of years. I had started teaching there, something that had been in my heart. But before my workshop was going to start, there was other workshop leaders, and I saw this lady by the name of Janis Thomas was going to be teaching. So I said, hey, I'll go to it. She was teaching plot versus character, I think, something like that. So anyway, so I go into that room, minding my own business. Really, I'm a very nice guy, just minding my own business. And before you know it, she's calling on me. She's asking me questions, like totally beating me up, embarrassing me. And for the most part, I was able to, I think, walk my way through it and gave a decent enough answer that I didn't embarrass myself completely. But at first I was a little bit peeved, like, why is she picking on me? And then it was like, wow, she actually knows her stuff. Wow, she's pretty smart. Wow, this is pretty good. I'm glad that she picked on me. I didn't make a complete jackass of myself. So that's how I met Janis. And then later on the day, I was going to be teaching, and then she showed up.
I did. I showed up to his workshop, and it was which was it? Beats? Story Beats.
It was the Beats, yeah.
And it was great. It was engaging. It was funny. He is a terrific workshop leader as well, and welcomed me making comments and throwing in my 2 cents, which a lot of workshop leaders, they don't want that to happen. So we had sort of a reciprocal teaching relationship right off the bat.
Yep.
And then, of course, later at the bar,
which is what everything happens at the bar at conferences. So we're hanging out with other workshop leaders and other writers, and we're talking. And Janis makes a comment, hey, we should teach together. I'm like, yeah. She says, no, I'm serious. We should teach together. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And it was a very natural thing. We each brought something unique to the table. We had, I think, very quickly we built respect for each other, and that makes it so much easier, right? And when you respect the person that you're working with, you're kind of like, oh yeah, do that, more of that, So it was a very natural thing. So we started thinking about, well, what are the things that we can cover? And she had a number of topics that she typically covers. I had a number of topics, and we found what's the most natural and organic way of teaching this stuff, because what our heart is we really want to pay forward. We've gotten so much value from conferences and other writers, and really it came down to how can we take what we learned, make it easy, package it in a way that anyone could digest it and immediately have an actionable solution, so they can go back to their room and just start writing. So that's where it all started.
Fantastic. That's like intensive at first sight, actually, that meeting, right?
Yeah.
It's like a meet cute for writing intensive, isn't it?
yes.
Okay. So Julie, we've got the origin story of the Novel Intensive. So how did you meet up with these guys? How did you learn about them?
So I was at an RWA meeting in 2017. RWA is Romance Writers of America, and Ara was a guest speaker for one of the meetings, and he did a very abbreviated version of their all-day class and basically walked us through the movie Notting Hill. And as you can tell by these few minutes talking to them, they're just super engaging, funny people, and so I was just delighted by the entire presentation. At the time, I was really, really stuck for a book I was working on, and I had one of those light bulb moments about halfway through his teaching, and I went, I've got what's wrong with it. I know how to fix this now. So I stopped him after class and flipped out and started saying, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. And he said, okay, back off, crazy lady.
I did not.
And then gave me his card and told me how to find his other classes. So I have since attended their all-day seminar and their, what was it called? The intensive one for the graduates of your seminar.
Workshop. We called it the workshop.
Yeah, I did that in July, and I'm going to keep going to them because even though I technically know how they teach outlining, every single time I've been in front of them, the project that I'm working on just comes to life.
That's awesome.
What's interesting for me as a writer is that we've taught many of these workshops over the past couple of years, and I learned something. I have light bulb moments when we're teaching for my own work in progress, which is fantastic.
Yeah. In fact, Mark, if I may, it's very selfish to say this, but when we're timing when we're going to do a workshop, I'm always looking at when am I going to work on my next project, and I want it to be right around the same time, because each time you have this dialogue, this conversation with the people who I got to tell you, I mean, it's just such an honor to have the kind of people like Julie who show up at our workshops. They have such great questions that it just forces you to think differently, to look at the story from different angles, and it just opens up so many new possibilities for our own stories. It's a lot of fun to do it this way.
So Janis, do you do the same thing? Do you bring a project, like a project at work, sort of in the back of your mind while you're doing one of the workshops?
Well, Mark, I tend to always have a project going, so I apply wherever I am in the manuscript. The last workshop we had, I had just completed a new manuscript and was about to submit it to my agent, and I was thinking during the workshop, okay, what do I need to fix? I have to go back and do this. I have to go to this chapter or this beat. I have to clarify. So yes, I'm always on something and always applying the novel intensive. Ara and I mean, this may be a little tangential, but Ara and I work a little differently because he uses the novel intensive principles to prep for his, am I speaking out of turn, Ara?
No, it's perfect. Go ahead, yeah.
You use them beforehand, and I tend to be more of a pantser than a planner, so I tend to apply the principles to the finished manuscript.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it, is that you can use it both ways. You can use it before to prep, you can use it after to revise, you can use it during.
Yeah. Do you notice how we said both of them? That's the beauty of it. This is what happens, like when we're teaching it. One of the beautiful things about teaching with someone that you really admire is that sometimes when she's speaking, I'm almost like attending myself. I'm like listening. I'm like, oh, you know what? I should fix that. And then she's looking at me. I'm like, why is she looking at me? Oh, she's waiting for me to move to the next slide. I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was enjoying what you were saying.
That was great.
I learned something from Ara. I've heard him do the beats for endlessly, and I still learn something from him every time. It's great. It's terrific.
So is that how you guys do, so like a day workshop, is that basically you guys going back and forth, or is it like Ara for an hour and then Janis for an hour? How do you divide up the time?
It's the latter. Yeah, we've kind of figured out who covers what topic. So we start with the concept, and we move, and I'll cover the concept. But that doesn't mean that Janis isn't going to put in a whole bunch of color around it. So one person leads it.
It's difficult for both of us to keep our mouths shut for an hour straight or 5 minutes straight. So we need to throw in our 2 cents along the way.
Sometimes.
And we're also very comfortable. I mean, we teach separately. We do other conferences, and Ara's taught dialogue and character, and I've taught beats. It just, but when we're teaching the whole day, we do have our own areas that we cover.
Okay. So Julie, I want to go back to, you had said that you had that aha moment. Now you've gone, that was the first time that you saw Ara, and then you've gone back. Was it the same moment in the workshop where the aha moment happened, or I'm just like, was it an organic thing?
Well, the thing that surprised me most about the way they teach is that everyone, for example, in our last group, there were 10 of us there at the graduate intensive seminar that they did. And I think it was 10 different genres. I think maybe 2 of them were romance. I was doing historical fiction. There was a crime. There was a mystery. We had everyone in there. And throughout the day, everybody had that moment of, oh, this is how I can fix this gigantic hole, or this plot problem, or this character. And so it was very organic to me to see through them that formula doesn't have to mean formulaic, that you can still be an artist even though you are following structure, and that structure doesn't mean that everything looks exactly the same. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They are teaching us to really fight for the emotional moments in the story, and they're making us prove the emotional moments in the story. But every story was so incredibly different. In fact, I can't wait till all 10 books, they're going to come out and they're going to be so good because they are so incredibly different. There was a dragon story. I mean, it was so incredible watching everyone walk through story structure with their own imagination, and to be able to be creative, and to understand how the creative can work and make everyone else around them understand it.
So
I answered your question.
No, you did. That was fantastic, and I love that. The formula doesn't have to be formulaic, which is beautiful. I love that sentiment. So is it best to go to a workshop like this with a very specific project in mind? Is that the best way to get value out of it?
We've had every kind of attendees. Some people have shown up with not even a concept. They literally use the seminar to start developing their concept. But my personal opinion is that I think where you'll find the most value is if you've gone through it and you've just hit walls. And then what'll happen is that in the context of the conversation, you will suddenly see those walls disappear, or you'll see why you were walking yourself into a wall. I think at that point is when the value of the novel intensive suddenly intensifies. You suddenly see that, wow, not only can I apply this to what I'm working on right now, but new ideas emerge, and your approach, your plan, your method of accomplishing it is suddenly out there as well. I don't know, Janice, would you agree?
I agree, definitely. For us, Ara and I, we have yet to teach a novel intensive and not have many of the writers have those aha moments. It's so rewarding for us to have 10, 12, 16 people at different points of the day during different different subjects go, oh my gosh, I know what to do now. It happens every time, and that's what makes it so worthwhile for us.
Yeah, if I may, I think it was a couple of years ago. I was teaching at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference. I was teaching beats, and the room had a lot. It was a small room, so there was a lot of people there. And there's this one young lady sitting in the front row, and as I'm speaking, suddenly she turns her head, her pen goes up, and I'm looking at her, waiting to see if she has a question, and she starts writing down copious notes. I just continued going. So during the break, she says, "By the way, I'm really sorry. Someone pointed out that you were looking at me. I just had an aha moment, and I had to write it. I got to tell you, it is such a gratifying feeling when you see the eyes light up, that it just clicks. Something comes together. It makes it really is very tiring for Janice and I to do it. A whole day of being engaged. We have to listen with intentionality. We have to be really listening for those nuances of the story they're telling so we can actually help them. But when we see that moment happen, it's yes, we did a good job. It's like that's that moment that you feel like you're really doing your work.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask each of you to share a thought or a moment of personal learning that helped you in your own writing during one of the novel intensives. And you guys can sort of jump in any order, so whoever has something right away, feel free. I'll tell you my backstory is Julie came back from one of the most recent, was probably sort of the graduate course level or whatever, the alumni course that you guys did. And she was raving about just how much she got out of it and how much she gained for it. So that's my moment. My moment was just recognizing the power of being in a room, with 12 other writers, etc. And that was the thing that worked really, really well.
Yeah. I'll tell you personally, I think it was the first time I taught the concept of story beats. And that has been like the core for me. But the first time I taught the story beats, honestly, I didn't know what kind of reaction I would have. I didn't know if people would get it, if people would appreciate it. And the whole idea of teaching a writing concept using audiovisual, using videos from movies, and using snippets from books to drive a point home. It was kind of like I'm going to throw it out there and hopefully it'll work. The first thing that was surprising to me was how many people showed up. Now, I think it was because I told everyone if you show up, you get a single serve packet of Nutella. So that really had been the reason. But then by the end, it was a lot, 55 or so people in this workshop. And there were some of them who were New York Times bestselling authors, some of them who had never written. It was the spectrum. To a person, they came up and said such amazing things that it just said to me, yes, what you're doing, you're on the right track. You're doing a valuable service for the writing community. So keep it up. Don't just clock this stuff in. Keep going at it, and you're going to do good things for people out there. That was that moment for me.
So are we talking about an aha moment in terms of teaching?
Well, yeah, something you learned even in that teaching experience, it could be.
Okay, so my aha moment happened a couple of years ago at the Southern California Writers Conference. I was teaching plot versus character, and of course I had a PowerPoint presentation to go along with it, which is what we do. And I spent about 45 minutes before my workshop time trying to find it on my computer, and it was gone. And I was on the phone with my husband, and I was having a little bit of a panic attack because, that's an hour and 30 minutes of a presentation, and I had nothing. So I walked into the classroom, and I had a whiteboard, and I apologized for no PowerPoint presentation. I didn't have my notes because they were all on the presentation. And it ended up being one of the best workshops I've ever given because I had to be completely engaged. I had to be mindful. I had to know exactly but it all came sort of naturally because I love teaching plot versus character because there is no plot versus character. It's all one. It's all about your character, their transformation, what they learn, and the plot grows from there. So see, I'm doing it now. I'm teaching now.
That's perfect.
It was great. Everybody was participating, and it went. And that was my aha moment. Was I don't have to rely on PowerPoint. I know what I'm talking about. I live it. I do it on a daily basis. And I love sharing it with people so that they have that aha moment.
And I would say mine is, they've mentioned movies several times, and Ara and Janis do this great thing where they teach by showing clips of movies because we've all seen, and they always use blockbusters that we've all already seen, and then they can say, this is the moment where the main character's mentor helps them through the dark moment. This is the main character's dark moment. This is the release. And then they show it in several different genres. So for example, I mentioned Notting Hill, and they show the moment in Jaws and the moment in Die Hard. And what's the other one you guys use?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, that's right. So I had that background of them showing the beats in each of these movies. And in this last class, they had gone through the synopsis of my historical fiction, which is ridiculously complicated. And at the end, I have one of the main characters dying because I don't like him. And Ara and Janis kept saying, he can't just die because you don't like him. Like, that's not... And I kept saying, yes, he can. I'm the writer. And I fought them and fought them and fought them. And they kept saying, you have not set this up so that there is a good reason for this person to die without any kind of redemption. Like, if he's going to die without redemption, we need to set him up as a bad guy, or he needs to get some redemption. Otherwise, it's completely unfair to the reader. And so that was my big moment of, I can't just do what I want to characters and assume that the readers know my feelings about them, because I know all about this character. I know he's a bad guy. But through the way they showed the beats, they showed me, they made me see, help me see that I hadn't set it up properly for the right emotional reaction from the reader. And it was such a gift because it added more work. I have to work harder on this.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks. But it's great because what it means is when this goes out to the editor, it's going to, that's a step I'm not going to have to rewrite. I have set up this emotional moment.
So is it possible then, it sounds like a course like this, well, it costs money and it costs time, so it's an investment, but it sounds like this investment pays off in the long run because potentially if you have a developmental editor, you've already fixed that part, right? Or whatever. Is that true?
Yes.
Something like that?
It was so worth the money for me. And now I use their outline to set up the next thing I write.
Yeah.
So that I'm filling in the beats before I start so I don't spend the rewrites ripping out my hair and wondering if I should just go get a job at Starbucks.
It's something I should add. Janis and I, we both do a lot of story coaching for clients. And what we bring is the kind of stuff that we do for them. So to a certain extent, we're teaching you to be your own story coach. We want you to be your own story doctor, so you can start surgically looking what works about this, what doesn't, how can you make it work better. We don't get into the minutia, the details of, how to write a beautiful sentence. We're interested in telling a great story, a story that'll resonate, a story that the reader will latch onto this character, good or bad, but we'll latch onto them because we are now vested in this character's transformation. And the plot just takes you through that journey. So we're hoping that, Mark, you made the comment that, will you need a developmental editor? Potentially not. And I guess we're kind of putting ourselves out of business in one way because we're giving them the tools. But what's really cool is sometimes when someone has gone through our classes and they contact us and they want some more help, we are using now that same language with them. It's like surgeons talking to each other. They know exactly. So when we say about the cracked glass moment, blah, 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 they know what we're talking about. And they get it, and we're able to go through a lot of the noise, get the noise out of the way, and get right to the heart of the story.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think a developmental editor, you're always going to need one, no matter at what stage you are with your career. You're always going to need a developmental editor. But today, it's so tough to get in the door that your manuscript really needs to be in the best shape it can possibly be. And Novel Intensive really does help with that. It helps it to be in great shape. If you do the work, there's really no shortcuts though. And that's another thing that we talk about because it is a long day. We go through a lot of different concepts with the intensive, and you can't say, okay, I'm just going to focus on structure, but I'm not going to worry about dialogue. You can't do that. You have to, every element of the manuscript has to be really as close to perfect as you can. It's never perfect, but it has to be as close as you can make it before you even want to submit it to anyone.
Yeah, the market demands it. Absolutely. Whether you're self-publishing, traditionally publishing.
Especially if you're self-publishing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much competition right now.
This is absolutely fantastic. I am so energized and excited. And so I'm up here in Waterloo, Ontario, and I'm thinking, okay, when can I sign up for the very next Novel Intensive course so I can virtually attend from my home here?
Yeah, about that, we don't quite have that yet.
No.
Honestly, I think the beauty of people being together, and we purposely keep it to a small group. We never allow it to go beyond 20 people. We want everyone to feel engaged. That we don't have that yet. But we're very conveniently located by the LAX, Los Angeles International Airport.
Major hub in the U.S., yes.
That is the U.S. You may need a passport. I'm not sure what you need. But yeah, no, we don't.
So it's actually it's in a hotel near the airport.
Yes, it's at a very nice hotel right by the airport. It's very conveniently located. We've had a lot of people who've flown in from Washington, Washington State, from Nevada, from Arizona. So we do get people on the left coast who I found out about us. We've gotten a lot of requests from people in New York, Michigan. Are you planning on taking this on the road? And as much as we'd like to do, the reality is that if we did something like that, the price would become prohibitive. You would have to cover all of our costs, obviously. And then when you look at writers, let's be honest, most of them are, these are hardworking people. I've seen a lot of seminars and sessions that, can charge you thousands of dollars for you to do this full day thing. We can't do that to writers. We're writers. We understand our people, so we try to keep it as reasonable as possible. So going on the road, it was also just didn't make sense. Not yet, at least.
Okay, it sounds like you guys are always a writer first, always thinking of the writers first. And because you're thinking about the writers first, I figure you may as well share with our listeners here some of your favorite. I love what you said earlier about being your own story coach, and you're going to put yourself out of work, but you love to train authors on how to do that. As writers yourselves, and obviously as people, all three of you who work with and teach other writers, what's some of your favorite advice on how to be your own story coach?
Yeah, Janis, you want to start or you want me to? Because when I start, I don't stop. Huh?
I wasn't going to say that, Ara. So I actually will say something that I know Ara agrees with and says, so this is something that we say in Novel Intensive, is to look at story structure, look at the movies and books, the popular movies, and watch them with an eye for when things happen, the story structure in the film. And we do, we in the Novel Intensive, we go over Notting Hill, we talk about Jaws, like Julie said, and we ask you to look at these movies yourself with an eye for what's happening when. The story beats, the character transformation, and it's good with books too. Read them analytically more than just for pleasure, because when it's done right, it's a beautiful thing, and that's how I learned. I know that's how Ara learned, by watching the masters at work,
Absolutely. Know your genre. Respect what your genre's expectations are, what the traditions are, what the readers are expecting. And as you start studying all these different books and movies that are in your genre, what happens is that there comes a moment where you start seeing those patterns. And all of these stories are fundamentally different to the reader's perspective. But as a writer, when you start analyzing it that way, you start seeing that story really does have a pattern. There's a beauty to tell how good storytellers tell stories. So those certainly come through. That's a very important advice. The other one that I'll throw out there, and it's something that comes up often when I'm working with clients, is really plan and track your character's transformation. If your character doesn't transform, if we're not seeing this transformation, then you don't really have a story that will resonate and will stick with the readers. You just have plot. Things are happening and the character is solving, and then it finishes. And it might be interesting, like Dan Brown has very interesting novels, you kind of you see all these things happening, but you never really get in it, you're never attached to the character. There's nothing that happens with you for the character because there's no real transformation. So look at your story. Look at how you're opening your story and how you're closing the story. And can you see this big transformative arc from the caterpillar to the butterfly? Do you see that happening? So if your character doesn't go through a transformation, you probably haven't quite figured out yet why this story exists. Janis says this all the time. This story that you are writing is the most important event that has happened to your character so far. And if it doesn't feel that way, if the transformation isn't big that way, then you're shortchanging your character and your reader.
And I just to add to that, your character is what is going to hook the readers, because we've all heard the old adage that there are no new stories under the sun, and that's really true. What differentiates the stories, what makes your story unique, is your character. And that, as a reader, all of the plot point, it doesn't even matter the genre. It can be sci-fi, it can be young adult, it can be quiet women's fiction. I'm reading it because I want to know what happens to this person. And I want to see this person change. And that's how, as a writer, you really grab your readers and take them along for the ride to see what happens to the character.
I'm sure we have this experience, and we've heard other people saying it. I don't typically read romance, but this one, or I don't really care for fantasy, but this one, I assure you there were still dragons, There was still love, but there was something fundamentally different, and it comes down to the character, and that we in effect, they become us, we become them. We put ourselves into that character, and we can experience that journey through them.
Yeah,
and
the
that's what
commonality.
makes, yeah.
Commonality, the human condition, you know. I would also add simplicity. That would be, that's advice that I give all the time, and I see writers get in their own way because they want to make something really big that doesn't have to be. Also, we're writers, so we're in love with our words. We love words, and we love showing how beautifully we can string them together. And we love using big words to show how smart we are. But most of the time, the best way to say it is the simplest way to say it. If you're telling a story, make the story accessible, and don't have it get lost or buried with all of this flowery prose. That's not to say don't write well, but get your point across, get rid of the adverbs, just keep it simple.
Yeah. And last thing I will say, it's not true. I just say last thing, but it's never true. The last thing I will want to add to this is, and we say this often, and I have it right on my computer. If you could see my eyes, you would see it. I have this thing that says, be intentional. And everything you write, you have to have intentionality. When I'm reading someone's manuscript, well, it's harder with my own manuscript because I don't have enough distance. But when I'm reading someone's manuscript, I'm immediately thinking, why does this paragraph exist? Why is this thing here? Why is this character here? Why did this just happen? How does it tie to the overall story, to the character transformation? If you think as a story coach, your own story coach, if you think with intentionality, if you look at your story with intentionality, I think you will see so many things that it's that kill your darlings comes into play. You will see that, yeah, you know what? I really don't need this. You can save it, just don't use it for the story.
If it doesn't move the story forward, get rid of it.
Okay. Julie, so what's your favorite story coach advice?
Well, the main thing I would say that primarily through Ara and Janis that I've learned is when I am reading now, every time I care about something, whether any kind of reaction, whether I'm sad or afraid or, you know, in love with the main guy character, you know, he's my new book boyfriend, and I always think, why do I care? And I always stop now when I care in a book and go, what exactly? It's just a little 2-minute thing, because I don't like to stop reading ever, but I like to take a minute and go, why do I care? Why is Mr. Darcy my book boyfriend? What made me care about him? What made me afraid in this situation? And it's always because if an author has done their job right, the previous scene or the first page or somewhere, the author set it up and earned it and earned that emotional reaction. So that's how I've been coaching myself now as I'm writing, is everything I write, I always think, I know what I want the writer to be feeling, or the reader to be feeling, but that's only because I know. So I always look back now and try to figure out, how did I earn this? Did I earn it? A lot of times I haven't. And so I have to go back and add, this is why we care that she failed, or this is why we care that she succeeded, or this is why it's a big deal that she bumped into her ex-husband in the elevator. You know, if you don't set it up to give the reader a reason to care, they're just not going to care.
Right.
So that's always what's in my head now as I'm writing, is why do they care? If I haven't set it up, they don't care.
Okay. That's cool. So you've opened a novel with a woman answering the door completely naked, or basically meeting her mailman. And I understand now why I cared. Not just because it was a funny moment and there was a naked woman in the scene, but because it was that complete, if I can analyze that as a reader who's enjoyed that novel, I think that was a moment where she's completely vulnerable. Yeah. And she recognizes that vulnerability, and that's the kickoff. As far as a reader, that's how I cared about her.
Yeah.
So we laughed.
And that is the book I dedicated to Ara and Janis, because they saved me from applying to Starbucks with that book.
For the time being, anyway, right, Julie?
So I think there's a perfect segue into that's Prosecco Heart. That was Julie. That was your most recent release, which I can't
available everywhere you buy your fine books.
Yes, all three of you had a very fine hand in crafting this It's an amazing book. It'll make you want to drink some wonderful wine and enjoy this the moving story. So I'm going to ask now, Julie, what's the next book that you have that's coming out that you want to talk about? And Ara and Janis, I'm going to ask you guys to share the same thing, what your most recent release is.
I am working on a 4-book romantic suspense series that is going to release at the end of this year called the Oro Beach series, which is set in a town that is remarkably like San Clemente, California, although it is not San Clemente in case any San Clemente people are watching. And then after that, in 2019, I will be moving on to historical fiction, which is what I've been talking about with Ara and Janis.
All right.
We can't wait for that one, Julie.
What's that?
We can't wait for that one.
Well, me too.
Let's see, what I'm working on now, it just recently went to my agent. It is called 15 Days with You. It is my first young adult novel. I write stories of second chances, so whatever the genre happens to be, that's going to be the general theme, stories of second chances. This is a story of a teenager who is in effect an orphan. His mom has recently passed away and he never knew his father. So he starts a 15-day journey surfing up and down the Pacific Coast Highway, reliving his mom's 15-day journey during the summer that she became pregnant with him. So it's a story where he will find out information about her, things that he never knew, and in the process he hopes to learn something about the man who was his father.
Cool. Awesome. And Janis?
My most recent release is, it's called All That's Left of Me, and it came out June 12th. It's about a woman. I tend to write women in crisis or people in crisis. It's about a woman who's very unhappy with her life, and she, we all make random wishes. I wish this, I wish that. And one morning she discovers that her wishes are coming true. And she starts making more and more wishes, and they alter her life in ways she didn't anticipate, sometimes not for the better. So it's a cautionary tale. It's a be careful what you wish for tale.
Very cool.
It's an amazing book. Amazing book.
Thanks. I've written 7 books, and it's my favorite.
Awesome.
I'm connected to it.
Go in reverse order, starting with Janis. Tell us where people can find you online and find more out about you.
So JanisThomas.com, and it's Janis with an S like Joplin. And all my books are listed, and buy links and all that.
Awesome. Thank you. Ara?
StephenKing.com. No, I'm kidding. It's aragrigorian.com. I know it's difficult. However, you can also go to tennisnovel.com. So my first book was based around a tennis player. So tennisnovel.com will take you to my homepage, and everything's there.
Well, that was clever.
Got to come up with something.
Julie, how about you?
We are novelintensive.com as well if you want more information about Novel Intensive.
Okay, cool. So we can guilt you guys into trying to do a virtual. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's not a bad idea, actually.
And I'm everywhere as Julie Wrote a Book on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere. JulieWroteABook.com. That's where I am.
I love it.
Excellent.
You wrote a lot of books.
Julie wrote a lot of books. That's the other domain she's
That's
from.
the next one.
Yeah. I grabbed that one really quickly.
Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon. My apologies for the technical issues, but it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much for having us.